What's going on, guys? Kenny Conwell here, and if you're on this video right now, watching this page, it's because you want to know how your credit score is broken down. So what I'm going to do is cover the 5 categories of credit and give you the roadmap of understanding the credit algorithm. So I've covered this in previous videos where I get into the percentages and how your score ranges. So at the end of this video, you will know step by step exactly what each category of credit looks like, how each category affects your credit score, and then in my opinion, if you do not have a 700 credit score, the mathematical way to achieve a 700 credit score. Now, the first thing we have to understand that what is a credit score? All a credit score does is predict the likelihood that you'll fall behind at least 90 days on a bill in the next 24 months. So what your credit score does is it predicts to lenders, based off the credit bureaus giving them that data, your likelihood of you doing that. So typically, when you're trying to get approved for credit, whether it's a credit card, personal loan, makes no difference, they're going to use your score to get you through the door, but they're going to approve you based off what's on your credit report. And there's 5 categories that make up your credit report, and what I call your credit report is your content. So your content is what gets you the approval, and these categories are the content categories that matter the most. Now, there's 5 categories, right? You have, before I actually cover the categories, let me give you the score breakdown. So at the lowest, your score can be a 300, and at the highest, your score can be an 850. So that means that's 550 points available of you having a perfect credit score. Make sense? Perfect. Now, you got that, there's 5 categories that make up that 550 points. The first category is 35%, and that has to do with how you've paid your bills in the past or payment history. More on that a little bit later. The second category of credit is utilization, and this has to do with how you manage your current lines of credit. I'll get more into that later. The third one is history. This has to do with how long you've had credit. The fourth one, and that's 15%. The fourth one is credit mix. So do you have the proper amount of revolving and installment accounts? And then the last one is 10%, which is applying for new credit or inquiries. So when you break each one of those categories down, they have a specific amount of points in that category. Now, the biggest one that trips up most people is the 35%. Now, chances are, if your credit isn't where it needs to be, you have to do some work with the 35%. Now, the 35% is representative of 192.5 points. So to keep this extremely simple, remember I was telling you that your score can range between 300 at the lowest, 850 at the highest. So 35% of 550 is, you got it, 192.5 points. So that is the biggest category of credit, and if your credit is not where it needs to be, this means more than likely you need to address the 35% first. Now, how do we do this? In a previous video, I broke down disputing versus challenging, the whole suppression process, and cleaning up your credit. I'm not gonna get into all the detail on this video. I just want you to understand there's 3 things that you wanna address with the 35%. So number 1, you have to get all the negatives removed from reporting on your credit file, right? And there's a litany list of negatives that you wanna do, starting with personal identifiers and ending at public records if that's happened to you. You gotta clean that up. Number 2, you have to pay your bills on time, because payment history is going to be affected going forward. So if you start the process, and this is why credit repair doesn't repair your credit. It's kind of like a counterintuitive thing, because many people don't address the issue. They think that, oh, I'm just gonna pay somebody to fix my credit, but I'm not gonna keep paying my bills on time for whatever reason. And then they end up messing up their credit because they get all the negatives removed, but their payment history is still messed up. So we have to make sure that second part is paying our bills on time, right? And then the third part, which probably should have came second, is having some type of cash flow control system in which you manage your money effectively and you make sure you pay all your bills on time. I recorded another video about that before, where I was kind of getting into the weeds of how to manage your cash flow. But that's the 35%. It's the biggest part of credit. So if your score is low, it's for 2 reasons in this 35% category. Number 1 is because you got charge-offs, collections, negative accounts, paid collections, public records, personal identifiers, missed payments. Probably those things that's causing it to be down on closed accounts, or you have open accounts that you have missed payments on that you need to address, right? Now, the second category of credit is your utilization. So number one, cleaning all that up will get you 192.5 points, and then maintaining the 192.5 points in that category means paying my bills on time, right? Now, that second category is utilization, right? Utilization has to do with 30% of your score. 30% of 550 is 165 points. Now, keep this extremely simple. The way utilization works, it has to do with credit cards and revolving lines of credit. So if you have any type of credit card with a bank, any type of line of credit, that's going to affect your utilization. Now, on another video, I broke down the difference between your reporting date and your statement date. Moral of the story, if you have, let's just say $10,000 in revolving available lines of credit reporting on your credit file, then that means that you can spend up to $10,000, and then as long as you pay off that $10,000 balance, that's not going to report utilization on your credit report. Now, remember, this is 30% of my score. So let's just say the opposite happens. I have $10,000 in revolving credit, and I'm using all $10,000 of revolving credit. That means I'm going to have high utilization. And if I have high utilization, that means I'm not going to be maximizing any points in this category. So that's why typically people say, well, if I pay off my auto loan, would that boost my score? Typically it won't. But if you pay off your credit card bills, or you pay them down to where you have 0 to 7% utilization, is typically what's recommended, you're going to maximize all your points. Because think about it. This category of credit is worth 165 points. So if you're using all 10,000, by definition, you're not taking advantage of theoretically 165 points, right? Up to that much. So that's why we have to make sure that category of credit, our utilization is always down and it's reporting at 0 to 1%. In the previous video, I broke down never pay on credit what you don't have in cash. Go watch that and to break it all down. But that's that second category. The third one is just good old history. And the way you establish history is just making sure once you've established a credit account, whether it's 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you just continue to make those payments on time, and then over time, you want your credit history to be at about 9 to 10 years worth of average credit age. Now, I won't get into the weeds of how you really lengthen your credit history. The biggest thing is once you establish a credit card account, keep that account open for as long as possible, especially if it's giving you benefits, because what it's doing is extending that age, and this is worth 15% of your score, or 82.5 points, right? So the way you want to make sure you do this is never, ever, ever close a credit card, especially if it doesn't have any type of minimum monthly payment, or not even minimum monthly payment, especially if it's one of those credit cards, what I call a tier 3 credit card, meaning there's no annual fee. Typically, you would have gotten an introductory offer, but the biggest part of this card is there's no annual fee. So essentially, you can keep that card open for as long as possible because it's going to keep open, it's going to keep extending your credit age. And then further, what you can do is just put like a quick little bill on there, like a Netflix account or something small, so that way you can keep the activity open, set that up on auto draft, and it's always paying, and what that's doing is extending your credit age. Which leads me to one other point about this credit history. A lot of people want to pay off their auto loans or their home loans early, and I get it, you don't want to be in debt, and that makes sense. However, for an auto loan or a personal loan specifically, if it's a 60-month auto loan or a 72-month auto loan, even though you have the cash to pay it off, it will make more sense to make that money work for you somewhere else, and then just keep making those monthly payments, because what that's doing is the longer that length of credit is on your file, it's extending your age. So it's really not necessary to pay your auto loan off early, because it's not going to have any type of boost on your score like utilization would, number one. But then number two, it's going to lengthen your age of credit, because you would pay it for the entire length of the loan. Make sense? So that's a really, really quick hack that many people just don't take advantage of. Then the last two is pretty simple. Credit mix. This is something that you have more control over. And credit mix really means if you're establishing credit for the first time or regrouping on improving your credit, this means you simply want to have 5 revolving accounts at the minimum reporting to all 3 credit bureaus. And you want to have 3 installment accounts reporting to all 3 credit bureaus. Now, you may be saying, well, Kenny, how do I get access to these accounts if I'm in the rebuilding phase? What steps do I take? I'll include some steps for you in the description, but the point I'm making really for you is that that's the proper mix, right? 5 revolving, 3 installment. And the reason why is because that's going to help you maximize the, what I call holy grail mix, and give you access to maximize all 55 points. So when you look at this and you break down, number 1, paying your bills on time and maximizing payment history, the 35%, that's worth 192.5 points. You with me so far? We're on the same page. So assuming we get all that cleaned up, we can maximize all those points in that category of credit. Number 2, we've established revolving lines of credit, and then we're paying down our balances before the reporting date. So that way we're not showing high utilization. So if we don't show high utilization, that's 165 points. 165 plus 192 is like 357.5 points, I want to say, give or take. And then number 3, the other one that's under our control is the type of credit accounts that we establish when we're rebuilding credit, meaning revolving and installment accounts. So if I have 5 revolving, 3 installment, and I add that to the 357.5, all of those 3 categories of credit combined equals 412.5 points. With me so far? So remember, let's go back to the beginning of this. Your score can range between 300 at the lowest, 850 at the highest. So simply making sure you have the proper payment history established and your glass clean is one of the things I say, or having the negatives removed. You have the revolving accounts and no utilization, and you have the proper credit mix. 412 plus 300 equals a 712 credit score. That is how you mathematically get a 700 credit score. And the length of credit is important, but it's not as important in terms of getting that 700 score in the quickest amount possible mathematically and systematically following a proven process. That last part of credit is just inquiries, and essentially that's worth 10% of your credit. So inquiries is one of those things that it's like a necessary evil. A lot of people don't like them because when you get inquiries, typically it's going to bring down your credit a little bit here and there. But one thing about it though is that it does in some scenarios still add to that last category of credit, but at most it's going to affect your score 55 points because it's only worth 10% of your score. So even if you got one out and got a whole bunch of inquiries and you had an 850, right, and you got all these inquiries, at most it's going to drop your score 55 points, which is still big, but at the end of the day, you'll be at a 795 credit score, which is still phenomenal. So the thing about inquiries is like one of those necessary evils. It still helps, but it hurts. And when you're looking at inquiries, I'll spend a little bit of time on here, is you can always challenge non-account holding inquiries for removal. So this means if you don't have a opened account that's not an open account attached to that inquiry, then you can challenge that inquiry for removal, and it would boost your score theoretically, because you'll no longer have that dragging down your score in that category of credit. But that is a thorough explanation of how your credit score is broken down. So if you want to learn more about how you can take the principles I just discussed and get a proven roadmap on how to mathematically do exactly what I've covered with your credit score, click the link just below this video. I have a free training where I break down what 95% of people overlook when it comes to fixing their credit and how you can start building credit with no or bad credit right now. Click that link. I'll see you in the video.